Texas.
Well, our speaker tonight does some mastering, I believe, don't you? Don't you, Brad?
I do. I just mastered Johnny Gimbel's new record for Ray Benson and Vince Gill.
There you go. There you got one right here.
Go. Let me write that down. Brad Vias Music. Is that how I get a hold of you?
It's BradDavisRecordingStudio.com, and that's the website. We do everything from death metal to country to gospel to folk to EDM. We do a lot of different stuff. So some of it's not my favorite, but when you're in the business, you do it because, as you know, because it pays the bills.
Right.
But that's the most recent thing we've done for those guys. So yeah, just look us up online, BradDavisRecordingStudio.com.
Where's your studio located?
It's located in Commerce. We relocated from Nashville. My wife's dad was sick with cancer, and we decided to get back. I grew up in Grapevine, Fort Worth area, Colleyville kind of area, in Nashville for 25 years, and just decided to get back to be with him, and bought a building in Commerce for about $10,000 and thought, wow, what a great deal. I think we'll stay here. There's no traffic, and Dallas is only an hour and 15 minutes away. I've got the best airport in the world. I can go to Yokohama, eat lunch, and come back the next day. And you can't do that out of Nashville.
How far is that from South Lake?
Yeah, you can do that out of New York and Sacramento and LA, but Nashville is just not as international as they would like us all to believe.
You probably have to go to Atlanta.
You'd have to go to Atlanta, yeah. But Dallas is fantastic. But yeah, we do a lot of mastering. We actually have the Dwayne Brown at Sony Red in Nashville gave us his blessing about 2 years ago on our mixes, and you know, it's a real cool thing to have him give us a pat on the back. So it's a copy of Slash's studio in LA. Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie bought that studio years ago, and I'm in a band with Billy Bob Thornton, as strange as that sounds. But anyway, I told him if he would name it Carl Childers and the Sling Blades, it would probably be sold out at every show. But you can't tell Caesar a lot, you know, you have to kind of back away from that. But I copied that studio and built it here in Commerce. We have 3 studios now. We have a B, A, B, and C. And B is rented out by a Dallas producer named Tyler Thompson. He rents that studio out full time. And so we're about 7 days a week right now. So we're just really fortunate that we're busy, you know, very fortunate. We talked last time about the thriving new digital music industry. I had a meeting today with PLA Media, and I don't know if you guys know who PLA Media is. That's Pam Lewis. And a lot of y'all may go, yeah, I remember her name. She discovered Garth Brooks. She made Garth Brooks famous.
Why don't you put Brad up there? Brad is already into his presentation, which I love, but he is, you know, he's quite a talented guy.
You guys just stick me wherever you want me at, so it's okay.
I just want to tell him what a great producer, engineer, session musician, recording artist you are.
I appreciate that. After 11 years of Marty Stewart, I have no ego. So you guys are taking me very, very, very back. As long as the check doesn't bounce, I'm good. So,
but you recorded with Girl Scruggs and Billy Bob Thornton, and
yeah, we're still working on Billy's new record. And Billy's actually doing a new tour with 3 other songwriters, singers. So I've been really fortunate to have a lot of great jobs. Can't keep a job, actually. Anyway, but getting ready to do a lot of solo stuff next year based on some of the research we've done with some of the artists we worked with. And it's exciting, and basically tying it in with PLA Media kind of puts a little value on what we're doing. You know, a lot of times you do things in the independent market, you think, maybe this will work, maybe this will work, maybe this will work. And then you check with somebody like Pam Lewis, who is actually on the grindstone dealing with radio stations daily. And you guys may think, well, you know, radio stations are a thing of the past, but since COVID has happened, the old nostalgic radio station, their popularity has gone up 93%. So it's a shocking number of percentage, but after talking to her and her staff today, it really puts a little bit of a belief in the fact that the pandemic has been actually pretty positive. It's Fender's record year of sales. It's Gibson's record year of sales. Alvarez, Taylor, the list goes on, who have sold so many guitars that they're almost 2 years behind in guitars that have not been built yet.
Wow.
So I got to tell you, it's been a fantastic year pandemically for many, many people.
Hard to find a guitar case, I know that.
Yeah, it's incredible. We've got a new music store in front of the building here. We cannot get guitars.
Yeah.
We can't order them. They're on back order. So things have really changed a lot. And actually the pandemic's been a big part of that. Radio is up, traditional radio is up. So there's a lot of things that have kind of been morphing a little bit. And I keep my nose on the grindstone because I've got a couple of artists. I've got like 12 artists I'm dealing with. Ricky Jean Wright is one of them that I work with. And we don't work as much on the online thing with Ricky, but he gives me kind of a little bit of a feed about what's going on with him. The thriving new digital music industry, and we talked about it a little bit last time about how master recording is worth so much more to us today. And we did a test on this. We did a cover for the record label, and I've signed a new deal with PLA Media, and they're going to manage. My manager just died of glioblastoma, so which is brain cancer, and he just died. Had his memorial the other day, and he was a good friend of Pam Lewis's, and she's just taken over my management. So I'm dealing with her on a weekly basis to kind of get the beat of what's going on in the market. She is interested in about 5 of the artists that we're working with. And the neat thing about that is we've got so much power with the online marketing if we just know how to use it. All of our online outlets, which would be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. I know that's brand new. Bear with me. And then we've got several others that are out there. They all need to match. All of the photos, all of the look, everything needs to completely match on every one of those. And I know you're thinking, well, I'm just a songwriter. I'm only selling songs. Well, I'm a producer. I'm a songwriter. I'm an artist. I'm an endorser for Alvarez and Fender and Gretsch and Shub and Neotech and blah, 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 blah. I'll take any free gear I can get my hands on because I'm a professional at this. And the kids are through college, so it's not quite as critical. But still, the music business is tough, and I do this 7 days a week. So, we've got to look for those opportunities. And what's really neat about my new contract with Pam Lewis and PLA Media, you guys can look them up online, is they are really tuned into what's going on with independent artists, dealing with master recording. We did My Endless Love, which is a Lionel Richie and a Diana Ross song. You guys may remember that song. I did an acoustic version of it, and our response was about, it's hard to say, it was about 125% more than it would have been if I'd have done an original song. And it kind of hurts right here. You guys probably think the same thing. The arrow goes right here because I'm a songwriter and I want to release my own songs. But to establish a little bit of a fan base, we're doing a little experimentation and releasing some classic hits that basically have a large sound scheme. I know that sounds a little bit trite to the business, but we're looking at songs that really have a lot of traction. So we were able to gain about 135,000 fans based on that one single. And the neat thing about it is once you record that single at home, you guys have a lot of recording capabilities at home. Obviously, we got 3 studios here. And so we do most of my stuff here. Obviously, it's affordable because I own the studio. But once you record that, you own that master, and that master is what you get paid for. On DistroKid especially, they handle the licensing to the artist via Harry Fox. They take care of that. And also, when the song comes out 5 to 6 months ahead of time, I'm just kind of going over what we talked about quickly about last time. It's got to be 5 to 6 months ahead of time. All that time that song's coming out, DistroKid gets a notification. I love those guys because after all my research, they seem to be more in tune with Spotify closely than anyone else on the market. So it's an opinion. So take it for what it is. But I don't get paid any money for that. I just tend to like DistroKid a little bit better because they tie in with Spotify a little bit better. And that's pretty much radio today. But Spotify took a big hit when COVID happened. They went about almost a little less than 0.5% on their stock. And I was talking to Pam Lewis about that today, but they crawled back and almost matched what they were before COVID. So I think it was just a hit, and people are at home and they're playing instruments, and heaven forbid they're playing accordions and banjos. We won't get into that. Guitars, yes, and pianos, juice harps and that kind of thing. And I'm making a little bit of a joke because I have a brother who's a banjo player, and most banjo players get the brunt of the joke, right? The banjo goes in the dumpster and hits the accordion, and that's a home run, right? So anyway, that's it's part of the business, as the fact that we've got basically a great opportunity because we've got master recording. That when you record a master, let's say that everybody on this particular panel, this is like the Hollywood Squares, isn't it? Remember that game show? I love that game show. Everybody's in a square, and everybody cuts a hit that's basically sold over platinum, let's say. And those particular platinum cuts are done in your own way. Like the top right square, I don't know everybody's name, but you're talking about doing a new record and you're doing it for yourself. And I know what you're talking about to the right of Ricky. I don't know if you guys are seeing him in the same spot that I'm seeing him in, but I'm doing a record also. I do so much recording for everybody else, but every year I do a record and I do singles. And so we want to do things that can garner us fan base. And we want to put our own songs out there, obviously, but we also want to grab fan base. If we grab fan base, then we build up an army of people that will listen to our originals. But at the same time, those masters pay a lot more than anything you could put out original. In other words, original song of mine, and I've been writing for a long time. I've had some success in a lot of areas, but an original song of mine would be a 5. And My True Love by Donna Ross and Lionel Richie would be way up here as far as fan base. So I'm going to get way more money on that master based on the fact that so many people know that original or that cover, and I'm doing my own original version of that cover. So that was something we talked about last time. And we talked about a little bit about radio as normal radio, but since COVID has happened, traditional radio has come back. So it's really interesting. A lot of people, and this has been on a research from the PLA Media Group, that many people want to know what's going on locally. They want to know what's happening locally. Can they find out what's going on locally with music, with sports, with politics and everything else, and weather? And so they're turning back to the original radio station, which I'm kind of an old nostalgic about that. I love old radio. Eddie Stubbs was a good friend of mine for years. And I haven't seen him in quite a long time, but I love traditional radio. I don't know about any of you guys, but that's just something I really enjoy. So master ownership, when you cut someone's cover, you own that master. We talked about that last time. Now, DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby, they're going to pay the writers their due, which is very little. It's 0.00000.4. Master ownership is 0.4. So you can kind of add that math up a little bit and realize that if I do a cover and I do my own version to it, I stand the chance of making a little bit more money and gaining a lot more fan base. So as we do these releases on different medias, which would be DistroKid and CD Baby, we want to always leave out 6 months ahead of time. There may be somebody who wasn't here last time, so I'm going to go over that. We release 6 months ahead of time, and we want to do that ahead of time, and then we want to create a video on iMovie or whatever you want to use. And we want to have that video playing each week and have a segment of that video playing every week up until the time that song's going to release. I got a call from my mother the other day. She said, your single came out, but I couldn't get the whole thing. I said, no, you can't, Mom. You can only get a snippet of it. It's going to tease you every week until that release date comes out, and then you can buy the song. And that's what we want to do. We want to, every week, we want to tell our fans, even as songwriters or artists, we want to tell them, I've got the song out. I've got the song out. I've got the song coming out. I got the song coming out. It's coming out. And I want you to prepare yourself because you're going to be able to get it on date X, whatever that date is, 6 or 5 months ahead of time.
But how can you keep people strung along for 6 months?
Well, I tell you, it works. That's the way Spotify is built. Spotify is built specifically on that market model. And I talked to Dwayne Brown at Sony, and Sony is actually moving to that model because Spotify is getting so much traction. Because what it does is it hits them every week, and it tells them, hey, don't forget, my single's coming out. Don't forget, my single's coming out. And it hits them every week with this video. And what we do is we take a segment of the video. We may take the front of the video, and then the middle of the video, and then the second half. And what we do is we cut it up into 5 to 6 segments, and we say, don't forget, my single's coming out on the date that's coming up. And this is working. It's really working. Lady Redneck is an artist we produced. She is a mom of 5, and Ricky Jean has heard me talk about her. She's a sweet lady. Her husband and her come in. She is dressed like Lady Gaga. Okay, so stilettos, tight jeans, blonde hair. You get the picture, right? So we looked up her name, Stephanie Lee, and we realized it was a porn site. And I thought, you really need to change your name because that's not going to work for you. And she said, oh, man, I had no idea, So I randomly said, we have a Lady Gaga, but you're in Texas. Why don't you call yourself Lady Redneck? Anyway, I was joking, totally joking. And why don't you call your band Texas Trash? Anyway, it's a total joke. But Pam Lewis told me today, Brad, you should have trademarked that and sold it to her because now she has over 3 million Facebook followers. 3 million. That's a lot. And what she does is she works it every day. She works Instagram, and she does 5 to 6 months out with her singles. She never releases a record. And what she does is she releases a single every 5 months to 6 months. And then when she gets to the end of the year, obviously we got to have her Christmas song. Don't forget, the biggest song on Spotify. Does anybody know what that song is right now? Does anybody have any idea what the biggest song on Spotify is in the world? I mean, above the Rolling Stones.
All I Want for Christmas.
Exactly. That is the largest grossing song on Spotify to date over any artist from A to Z. That is the largest song. And the reason why is because it gets played every single year. Every single year, they are forced, radio is forced to play that song. And Mariah Carey doesn't even have to get out of her PJs to get them to play that song because they're forced to because it's a holiday song. So you can't forget your holiday songs. And the thing is as she does her entire list, and that's what we're going to be doing this year with Pam Lewis and myself as an artist, is we're going to release all the singles, and then we're going to put them on a record and release them again as an album and sell them to the same folks that bought the singles again for the second time. Now, Lady Redneck's doing something different that we did last year. We created a red vinyl record because her Lady Redneck, right? And she has red lipstick and the whole 9 yards, it's a brand. It's, she's not one of my favorite singers, but I do like her singing. It sounds a little bit like Marilyn Monroe and Dolly Parton. So it's not maybe something you would go, wow, that's fantastic. But when she sings on the radio, you know who she is, and you can identify her immediately when you hear her. And that's important. So at the end of the year, she's selling her product to the same fans 3 times. First time the single, second time the CD, third time a vinyl. So this system is working. And so Sony is moving into this particular marketing system. And so is PLA Media with all their artists. And so that's what we talked about a lot last time. One of the main important things that I think is super important, and you guys can stop me, is getting your master, getting your audio to a broadcast master that matches Sony Red. Sony Red is our benchmark. Dwayne Brown is a good friend of mine at Sunny Red in Nashville, and we've had a lot of discussions about this. A lot of audio is squished and turned into a 2x4. You guys know what I'm talking about, where the audio is completely solid in the field of audio. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of some dynamics and some holes in the audio because I like things to breathe. Marty Stewart probably, instilled that in me years ago. We want things to get really quiet. We want things to get really loud, but we want things to say broadcast quality because we're competing with a ton of people out there on the market. So if we have all of our branding photos exactly the same on every single channel that we're doing, and a lot of y'all are doing it. If you know that Ricky Jean, a good friend of mine, has got a great URL. Ricky Jean, tell them, that a lot of them know your URL, but your URL is AmericanSongwriter.com, right?
Right.
Yeah. Y'all, we should have gotten early and stole that from him, right? Barbara, go ahead.
I thought it was Americana Songwriter.
Americana, is that right? AmericanSongwriter.com? Right.
Yes.
So it's a great URL. I mean, so the neat thing about it, and Ricky, I haven't looked at your stuff in a long time, but PLA is getting ready to do a makeover on all my stuff. I love Pro Tools. I love running a studio, but I hate social media and I just hate messing with websites. I really do. But that's me as a person. So PLA is going to take it and make sure everything is completely solid visually on all formats, so that when they look at it, they see the person they need to see. And that's important. And I've known that for a long time. I've just been really lazy about it. But master ownership is important. Branding is important across the board. And getting the demos to broadcast master is very important. And there's a lot of ways to do that.
What do you explain this master thing again? I'm a little bit off because 15 years ago, Barbara and I did an album exactly the way you described it. We did all covers and did it pushed together as an album. And I own that master. Is that what you're talking about?
That master's worth a lot of money. If you released it now, you would get the bulk of the money for it. The percentage to the writer would be 80.4.
But who decides that money rate, the royalties? That's the big problem now. And Spotify's getting sued out the ass because they refuse to pay the royalty rate, which is 9.2 cents per play per song by the U.S. Copyright Office.
Right.
That's a big problem because you got a bunch of senators and everybody who don't give a shit. Anyway.
Right.
That's what should be paid. This is 0.4. That's ridiculous. And plus,
it's terrible.
Spotify, and none of them do fiduciary type actions. I'm a BMI ASCAP publisher, and it's pissing me off.
Yeah, it's really making everybody angry, and I don't know how soon that's going to get turned around. So the only thing we can lean on is that master ownership. We own it. We own the master.
I own that master, even though it's got Beatle tunes on it. And
it's your song. It's your song. Now they're going to get paid the royalties, obviously, which are going to be minuscule. But you're going to get the master ownership, which will be 0.4. That's a lot more than 80.4.
Barbara, give him the copy of the album.
Right.
Yes.
So forgive my ignorance, but I can record a cover song with no licensing agreement with the writer, original, and DistroKid deals with it?
Well, DistroKid will notify Harry Fox, and they will pay the writers their percentage. It may cost you $12 for the year.
It's 12. I just
$12.95.
I belong to Harry Fox, and I've done some albums where I had to pay it used to be $35 a song,
right,
until it reached a certain sale point, and then they.
Well, now a lot of the independent labels are allowing DistroKid and CD Baby to do that work for them, so they don't have to have a staff. They take care of it. They pay the royalties, and then when you go in with your single, that cover, you own the master.
That's my criticism with those companies, because they don't have a staff and they're not doing their fiduciary duty. They're taking money, but they're not really going out and finding out where those songs are being played. And with music, I'm a computer tech. You can go onto those logs and say, well, you played it 100 times and you're only paying me for 25 times.
You're so right about that, man. I mean, I got a call the other day from Cocktail Creamery, which is in McKinney. I'm doing shows there, and I said, "Just get ready. ASCAP, BMI, CSAC they're gonna bum rush you and try to demand money from you. So you're gonna have to deal with that. And the only way that you can deal with that on this particular market is you've got to be organized. I mean, I've been in a couple of lawsuits in court about this, and they obviously have the right to sue anybody they want to sue. But the neat thing about it is if you have really good records, Barbara at the Texan in Greenville, do you guys know about the Texan venue in Greenville? It's a world-class venue in Greenville. They have everybody from Eric Clapton to you name it.
Tony Ramey.
Tony Ramey's there as well. I play there many times, and I'm probably on the bottom list of those guys. But anyway, the idea is that she's an attorney, and her and I have been talking a lot about the fact that ASCAP says we need you to pay, and she said, you can give me exact paper trail of where that money goes back to that artist. I'll sign the deal and I'll pay the money.
That's what I did in Fernando's back in Branson in the 90s, and I got him off my back. I said, you show up, here's the song list, you tell me who did what, I'll pay you the 4 cents, and you can't count the chairs because they're all folding.
Right.
He's smarter than these guys. But I just did another lawsuit here in town where we fought, and they were threatening her with $30,000 threats.
Right.
That's another problem. That's strong arming. That's bullshit. I mean,
it is.
And nobody in the music industry seems to. Well, not the music industry. The lobbyists in Washington, who are the music people are giving money to, are sitting on their ass smoking cigars, and they don't care.
Yeah, you're right about that. And
I've been fighting this battle for 20 years. You ask Barbara. I'm a really heavy duty fighter on this whole thing.
Well, and we've got a right for our ownership. I hate that music's gotten to a point where it's almost seems free, which really it's hard for me to say that and feel good about it. Because I work hard. You guys work hard. We're cutting your songs and writing them. And I mean, I do this for a living. This is all I do for a living. 7 days a week. I produce records and film scores and radio commercials, and now travel as an artist. I'm in about 3 or 4 different bands. And, so it's a tough business, especially when that's the only money you have coming in to pay your bills. No retirement, no extra stuff. That's all you've got. So things get a lot more serious to me in that regard. This master ownership has been really great. It's paid my account back really well. And it's been.
Do you split that with you guys? Do you split that with PLA? I mean, is there some, or is that
PLA gets a percentage. They get a 10% percentage of what I do because they book and manage me. But they don't get a percentage of my master ownership. There's a couple of, I'm sure there's a lot of different deals out there. Pam Lutz and I have been friends for so many years, but it's extremely important, to have that relationship either with DistroKid or CD Baby, so that you got control of everything. You've got your label or you're on a label. And I think being independently is much more important than anything now today. The thing I want to talk a little bit about is these, if you record at home, how do we get a broadcast master? And I've had a lot of great teachers. Dave Cinco, who is the live sound engineer for the Punch Brothers, who also designed Sound Emporium in Nashville, which is over by Belmont. And he's a great engineer. All of the Easy Drummer and drum programs out there, he was the engineer on those. So I've had some great coaches. Daniel Lemois, who produced U2, I got to spend about 3 years with him at Billy Bob's studio in LA. And I just learned a lot from a lot of great people. So I stole as much as I possibly could and never said a word about it because I was there to learn and soak all this great stuff up. Tony Brown as well. He was a little hard on me, but I've forgotten all those times, and I think I'm okay with him now, but I wanted to kill him at one point because he was so rough on me. And he's a lot shorter than me, so I wanted to take him down with my Telecaster, but I held off. I learned a lot from him. And Richard Bennett, who was Marty Stewart's producer, who produced Guitar Town and produced Neil Diamond for 19 years. Great coaches. So I'm just saying I've learned a lot. And when you're in your DAW, it doesn't matter what DAW you're in. You could be in Logic, you could be in Cubase. God forbid you're in Cubase, but if you are, that's okay. You can get some great sounds out of a lot of different things, even GarageBand. And I got to tell you guys, I've got a couple of professionals, a doctor and a lawyer that are in Dallas that wanted to have their stuff mixed at our studio, but they were using GarageBand. Well, I shook my head and said, no, no, we're not going to do that. But they said, really, you can just give us a shot. That's all we've got. That's all we know. And so basically we spent about a year figuring out how to get the levels just right to where their levels were appropriate for Pro Tools and a broadcast master. Go ahead, Barb. I see you grabbing your mic.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to say, yeah, it's because of the bit thing. You've only got 16 bits instead of 32 or whatever. So you're not getting as much of a sound from the GarageBand thing. But I have actually had a couple of GarageBand albums that I've produced through the DAW of GarageBand and had them mastered, and they really came out okay, pretty good.
Right. And the thing is when you're going from GarageBand to Pro Tools, you've got a little bit of a problem because everything that's in the yellow in GarageBand is in the red in Pro Tools. And Pro Tools is +4. And GarageBand, obviously, like you're saying, Barb, is the bit rate's a lot smaller, but it's compressed already when it comes out of the machine. Mm-hmm. And
but
so
the engine of GarageBand is the same audio engine as Logic.
It is
identical.
It's identical.
So whatever you can do in Logic, you can find in GarageBand. And I'm not a big Logic guy or a big GarageBand guy,
right?
But it's the same audio engine produced.
Exactly the same, identical. Owned by the same company, actually.
Yeah.
Avid owns both of those companies. Yeah. The thing about GarageBand is we have a Logic producer here in the studio that rents B. And so we brought the GarageBand files in and compared them side by side. And we realized that the GarageBand files were compressed 8% more than Logic when you compare them side by side. Obviously, you'd never hear that in a session.
But there's settings that cause that. I think
exactly.
I'm not a GarageBand guy or a Logic guy, but.
And those guys really didn't know what to do. But as we spent about a year, we were able to get those levels just right so that we could actually produce a broadcast master that Sony Red would approve of. And that's what we tried to do. So when you're doing your outputs on your masters, a lot of people master while they're in the session. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people master on a standalone unit, maybe T-Rax or Ozone 7 or 8. Isotope. So, and that's really more preferable for broadcast mastering because you can compare all your levels quickly over a 10 to 12 song batch of songs. If you master inside the session, and I've had issues over the years and learned a lot, you end up with some songs that are louder and some songs that are softer and some songs that are not as dynamic and some songs that are more dynamic. So using a basic compressor on a 4-to-1 ratio, where let's say we're using a bomb factory, okay? And I don't know if you guys know what a bomb factory is, but it's the old compressor that's been around for years.
Pretty harsh.
I'm sorry?
Pretty harsh bomb factory.
It is, unless you use it properly. And the neat thing about it is it's like using a fancy coffee machine. You don't really know where you're at until you go to Mr. Coffee. If you go to Mr. Coffee, you're in the trenches. And you can kind of get down to brass tacks about what you're doing without all the frills. And that's important. When you're doing a session and you're not using basic stuff, you end up using a lot of fancy stuff that sometimes takes a lot out of you, basically. And if you don't know how to dial it in, it can be a problem. Logic is already set up with so many parameters that are already set for most people. GarageBand's the same way, as you were saying. Pro Tools, not so much. Pro Tools is a Hasselblad with about 1,000 buttons on it. And all those buttons have to be dialed in perfectly to make everything look right and sound right. And so I want to share my screen for a second if I can do that with you guys. Host is disabled. So I don't have a screen sharing capability here. But if I do, I would show you what I'm talking about.
Harry, make him
Yeah.
a co-host so he can share a screen.
I have to see some
Can you just
ID.
hit share a screen?
So
I
I've,
do.
for some reason, Harry's Zoom is not set up for anybody to share. So, but I was able to do that
He should be able to
at
share
the
now.
board meeting
I'll tell you what.
because he made me a
Try
co-host.
try it
So,
again, Brad.
Make him a co-host.
I
I'll
just
just
did.
say I can take a picture and just shoot you a picture if I need to.
Brad, try it. I just made you a co-host. See if you can
Try it
see if
now.
you can share.
I'm getting there. There we are. I'm right there. So you guys see the screen, and the reason why the bomb has been, it's a little bit harsh, as he said. So you got to know how to dial it in. If you do a 4-to-1, a 3-to-1 ratio, then you're basically grabbing something that's going to be very transparent, because all we're trying to do here is we're going to create a maximum headroom, which is Sony's settings are negative 1.0 with a threshold of negative 2.9. Whatever maximum headroom plugin that you use, those are Sony Red's settings, okay? So the imager we're using, because we have to, this is a record that's going to be in a soundtrack, and it's got to be spread slightly wider according to what the director wants. So so that being said, I'll take that out of the loop and just put the bomb up. So the bomb is going to give me compression that's barely going to move. It's barely going to move, and it's not going to move much. I don't want it to move hardly at all off of the standard signal. So this is obviously too much movement. You guys can see that, right? So I'm gonna dial this into where it barely moves. And it's still moving a little too much. And that's the way the bomb would be set. And it could be any kind of compressor, any compressor that you like that's really simple. We've got a lot of very, very intricate compressors, and it's great to use them. You just got to know how to use them on your threshold and your speed and your limiter and your gate, and make sure you know how to use them. This is very simple. So if you're a songwriter and you go like, I need something really simple, the bomb is awesome, but you've got to make sure that you dial it into where it's not hitting very hard here. It barely moves off the 0 mark. And then the maximum holds the headroom up to negative 0.1. So once that is done, it's put into mastering. And mastering is going to go, I like to use isotope 7. We've got 8. Somebody's saying I don't have my volume really loud here, so I apologize. But isotope 7 is one of my favorite. I love 8, I love 9, but for some reason 7 sounds warmer and it sounds better. So there's several engineers. I got a friend of mine in LA that's got about 8 Grammys. I call him occasionally and I say, JD, what are you using? We're still at 7. We tried 8, we tried 9, but 7 sounds better. So I've got a lot of great connections that kind of help me keep this under wraps. But I'm using basically a -1 on my ceiling for vintage limiter. And then I've got a maximizer. So I've got basically a bomb factory, basically a headroom maximizer with a ceiling of 1.0. And then I've got a few other things here, the exciter, the dynamics, and the equalizer. And these are dialed in for this particular record and for this particular soundtrack. That's going to be 13.1. It's not an 8.1, it's not a 5.1, but it's 13.1. And I tend to have a little bit of an issue with this 13.1, as if we need more points to listen to. Why wasn't 5.1 enough? But who am I to say? I'm the mixing engineer and they're the director. So, but having a ceiling, and please, if you guys have something to say, I don't want to cut you out here. It's kind of hard to hear everybody, but having a ceiling maximizer like this, and having a bomb factory or some kind of compressor that will basically hold a 4-to-1 and a very slight movement on the peak limiter right here on this.
Like the old DBX compressor
great.
limiter.
DBXs are great. They're fantastic. I love those.
You just take each one they with that small, and you put two of them together, and we put them in these topless bars in Dallas. Used just like that.
Right. And the thing is, I've got 5 DBX racks over here, real ones.
Oh.
I love DBX. Love them. They're fantastic. So, but you need something simple. So what happens is we create a song that's not going to be over this. Do you see my cursor right there? I'm going to let this roll. It's going to basically hop over that a little bit, but it's going to stay right about there. And I'm going to bring this up here so you can see it. You can see I'm going to be like at 2 to -1. And I want to be in that threshold between the 2 and that -1 right there. So that when I get into mastering, I've got a little bit of headroom to bring it up and make it a little bit more fuller, enhance the high end, sparkle the low end a little bit, and mid-range. But what it does is it gives me that Sony Red mastering broadcast quality. And to me, I don't know about you all tonight, but to me, one of the hardest things is making that master sound amazing, making it sound fantastic. So there's a lot of ways you could go to T-Racks, and you could use T-Racks, and many of y'all probably use that, possibly. T-Racks is a great program, but I love Isotope. We're getting great results out of it, and it seems that Sony Red really, really likes it. And if Sony Red likes it, I'm probably going to lean that way a little harder because they're pretty much our largest distributor that we have digitally. I'll stop for a minute. I know I've been talking like crazy here, but this is really important for me, guys.
What is Sony Red?
Sony Red is our largest distributor of music in the world. They control all the distribution, and they basically monitor it. And I say this a little lightly. They're kind of like NATO. They monitor everybody on the market because they want to know what's going on. And that's kind of weird to say that because they're kind of like Big Brother watching, but they want to know what's going on so they can be the very best. And so they monitor everybody that's got everything going out. They keep tabs on DistroKid, CD Baby, Taxi, TuneCore. They want to be the best. And so they've got a team of people that do nothing but watch that. And they watch sales, they watch interaction with fans. They watch social media, monetization, and that kind of thing. So Sony Red is our biggest distributor, and they're one of their subsidiaries is Orchard. And you guys may know Orchard or may know of Orchard. Anybody in this particular group tonight could have an Orchard account. And y'all may know of it already, but if you have a record label, you start a record label, you can get an Orchard account and distribute directly to Sony Red. So now with the internet, we have that opportunity to do that. So there'll be like 10 new labels start up tomorrow, I know, right out of this.
I distributed through KTEL. When KTEL was real big, I distributed through KTEL. All my stuff's worldwide through KTEL.
Yeah, KTEL's great. They've been around a long time. Solid company. I know that company well. And they've been a proponent of social media and social distribution as well too. They're not as advertised as much now as some of the others, but that doesn't mean they're not a great company.
Well, the old man died and his son took it over, and he got more interested in buying up land up in Canada to grow weed. So that's where their focus went. And they're kind of falling apart a little bit. And I went through this other gentleman who basically, you got to be careful out there, folks. I've distributed music all over the world through these guys, and you don't always get a paycheck.
That's right. That is right. DistroKid, one thing neat about DistroKid, I'll tell you, DistroKid allows you to set up team members. In other words, if I wrote a song with 3 guys on here, a bard and 2 guys, I have three partners. I could set you up as team members to where the master of the original would go directly into your checking account. And it would be automatically taken care of while you're in your PJ sleeping in your bed. Ding, the money would go in your account automatically. So DistroKid's got a great infrastructure for that. And they're definitely behind the independent guy. They're a proponent of helping us do what we do. we've had a lot of people that we worked with through the Louisiana Hayride record label, and that was a label that actually Ricky was on as well. The owner just since died and passed away, and so I'm moving to another label here shortly. But the neat thing about it is that particular label did a lot of research on CD Baby and TuneCore and KTEL and DistroKid and several other outlets that are out there. And DistroKid was more connected with Spotify than anybody, and that's the reason that we went with it.
Brad, was that Maggie Warwick?
Maggie Warwick, she passed away. Yeah, and I just talked to her husband. Her husband's 89 years old.
I didn't know she passed away.
No family, no kids. I can't imagine being 89 years old and not having anybody to hang with.
I know, that's
very sad.
Terrible.
So I check on him each week, and hopefully I can get down to see him. He's under not quarantine, but he's in assisted living, so they don't let us come and go.
Yeah, they were great people. You know, I met them back in the 80s when we were at the same Texas music booth in France at Meedham.
Amazing people. And she co-headlined with Elvis when she was 19 years old on the Louisiana Hayride.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing.
So did I hear you correctly when you said you use Sony Red as the you try to master to their standards?
I do, because they set the standard, basically. They set the standard.
So how do you know if you've met the standard?
Well,
or how does one know?
The only way I know is by referencing. If I didn't know Dwayne Brown and didn't know the internal crew, I would reference. I would pull in a song that was directly distributed by Sony Red, that's a major artist, and I would put it into my mastering. I would grab, am I still sharing the screen? I hope I'm not. I am.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, guys, that I'm doing that. But I would grab a master off the internet. I'm sorry, I was doing that. I wasn't paying attention. And let's say it's I don't know, an Alan Jackson tune on YouTube. And I would grab, let me go to media real quick. I'll just quick. I don't want to waste a lot of time. I want to make sure we get to this.
Hey, Brad, is that label, was that label for sale?
No, well, right now it looks like it's going to go. Kenny Wayne Shepherd's dad, Ken Shepherd, you may know Ken. He's head of the Grammy board for Texas.
Yeah.
His son is Kenny Wayne Shepherd, the blues guy.
Right.
Okay, so they're basically looking to give it to him because he was the family's most close friend.
Okay.
So what I would do is let's say I took a song that's a Wilco song. I was working on a record today for an Austin artist that referenced Wilco. And so I would take that particular song and I would turn everything off of this song because it's already mastered, right? You can notice what it looks like. If I go to some of these others, you can notice there's a lot more variety of dynamics within the songs. But if I go to Wilco's mastered. You can tell the difference. So I'm going to want to compare it with all those. And that's how I would get my Sony Red verification if I didn't know the crew. Now, I know Dwayne Brown really well because I dealt with him in Nashville for many years. And so we talk a couple times a week and if not more. And basically, I get his opinion directly. So I'm really fortunate to have that connection and say, what do you think about this? And he's kind enough to say, man, that's spot on. And I really love, what you're doing there. And that's, it's a real cool thing to have that, I got to say. But normally I would reference, I did an EDM record for Willie Jones, and Willie Jones was on The Voice several years ago, won third place, a black kid, grew up listening to Charlie Pride and did really well. So I produced this EDM record, and I'm not an EDM producer. I really hate it. Absolutely. I just can't stand it. So what I did is I grabbed whatever they thought he liked that was going to sound like EDM, and I threw it into my mastering. We referenced those songs, and we made those songs sound exactly level-wise and dynamic-wise to that particular master to match it. So that's what the mastering does for you. When you master out of Pro Tools, or you master out of Logic, or you master out of Window or Cubase or whatever you're using, you don't get a chance to do that. You don't get a chance to compare those songs unless they go into a standalone mastering software. Anyway, I know I'm rattling off here quite a bit. I'm getting close to the end of time. Anybody?
Do you use a mastering software? You don't. What is your mastering software?
It's Isotope Ozone 7.
Okay.
There's 8 and 9 and 10 and 11's getting ready to come out, but 7 compared to about 9 engineers. I got 3 engineers in New York that are good friends, and the rest of them are in LA. And I use them. You know, I'm not the best at everything that I do. I need all the help I can get. So if I can call my pro buddies, and most of these guys have about 5 to 7, some of them have 8 Grammys for mixing records, I will call them and say, hey man, what do you think about this? We don't like 7, or we don't like 8, we don't like 9 and 10. We love 7. That's what we're using on all the Sony Red broadcast mastering we're doing. So it's a real benefit to me to have guys like that in business. I feel really fortunate that I can call them and get some good feedback from those guys. Because I'm learning stuff every day, learning new stuff all the time. Even though I do Pro Tools 6 to 7 days a week, I learn new things all the time. I had an intern come in the other day and found a new shortcut, you know, on the screen, on this, keyboard. And I didn't know it. Well, I was shocked, guys, I got to tell you, because I do Pro Tools every day, 10 to 15 hours a day. And I didn't know the shortcut. So I learn stuff every single day, you know.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
My wife is a representative for she had one of the major music supervisors, or not supervisors, music editors. And he came into my studio one day, and I'm a Pro Tools guy. And
love that.
And he proceeded to start working on my rig, and I had never seen almost a single thing that he did. And he worked for hours on a major motion picture for this tune we were doing, and I had never seen any of it ever in my entire Pro Tools experience.
Yeah, he was working in a different, he had it customized for himself, you're saying.
I'm just saying he went on my rig and pulled up a bunch of stuff I'd never seen, and I just
went, yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
You know? And I still don't use what he did, but he's a big time guy, and what he does has nothing to do with what I do.
You know, there's a guy that does film stuff for Faye Dunaway on all of her films, and I got a chance to work with him in London, and I was learning Pro Tools, and so I would pull my Pro Tools up. He was training me when we were on the road with Billy Bob Thornton for 6 months, and I would pull mine up, and he would get on the rig, and he would take his mouse and go, nope, 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 nope. He was shutting windows that I had open that he felt were wrong. So it's amazing.
This guy, his music editor, doing I think it was some kind of a huge movie, had nothing to do with me as a music producer. Nothing to do. He clicked off all these windows I'd never seen and had no use for anything I did, but it was still really interesting. That's
the one thing neat about Pro Tools is it's so customizable. It's so customizable, and everybody's so different. That's what's great about it. It's a tough, you know, you work Pro Tools, obviously, you know what I'm talking about. There are so many buttons, so many prompts, so many shortcuts. It's
different. You're a music editor for major motion pictures. It's got nothing to do with us music producers.
Exactly.
It's all out there.
I mean, I deal with a lot of directors and music supervisors and producers, and actually Billy Bob as well. He's a great producer. And you're right. I mean, we just capture the sound, and then, you know, it goes from there into the film world. And we can only pat ourselves on the back and hope we captured it the best we can with the best mic and the best musician. Any other questions, guys? I've been rambling.
You always enlighten us. We love it.
Well, just remember, when you're coming out of your DAW, you want to make sure you go negative 1.0. And the threshold on that, I'm using a Maxim, and you can use any kind of ceiling leveler is what it's called. I'm not using anything else on that ceiling leveler. I'm not turning on the dither, the noise shaping, the bit mapping. I'm not messing with any of that. I'm strictly just using it to create a ceiling of negative 1.0, because that's where Sony's at.
Which Maxim?
I'm sorry?
Which Maxim?
It's called Maxim, M-A-X-I-M.
I've got 4 of them. Which one do you use?
I'll show you the one. Let me get back on my screen share.
Oh, you don't have to go to screen. Just what's the title.
Well, it's called Maxim, is all it's called.
Maxim has 4 different versions.
Right. This particular version, I really can't tell you what it is because it doesn't really specify. I use the basic one because Daniel Lenoir, who produces U2, I love his mixes, still uses this basic.
I've got there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's like 3, I think.
Right. This is one of the basics. It's not a real fancy one, but I'm not messing with the wet, none of that, or the 16, or the shaping, or noise shaping, or the dithering, or any of the release. I'm only using it to create a ceiling so that I don't go over -0.1. So that when I get into mastering, I've got a lot more control with my ozone, and it allows me a little bit more shaping tools to make them all match. And that's really what's important because, you know, this record was cut over a 2-year period of time. Notice how low this one is, and notice the difference in that one. We got a lot more dynamic variety in that one as well. This one's a little bit more where it needs to be. And so I've got to work on 1 and 2 to make it match 3. And so what I'm going to do is find one of those that matches up with that -0.1 Sony Red volume. And I'll do that by basically doing a reference. This is a Vern Godston set of tracks for film. And so it's for an indie film out of Dallas. And so I'm going to try to find some Vern Godston cuts and try to match those is what I'm going to do. I'm going to reference off of those, you know. So anyway, but any more questions about the mastering part of it?
It's always amazing to hear about it. So keep it up.
So, do you require how much tails and heads on when I deliver something to you to master?
Well, I normally, you know, if let's say I'm doing something for a film and they're mastering, I'll deliver a second on the tails and heads, and then sometimes some directors require 2 seconds. It really depends on the project.
Don't you need some more than that to put like the metadata and stuff like that? And
not necessarily. Not necessarily. The metadata now with Sony Red is written into the track, no matter what the heads and tails are.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if the song does a fade. It's not going to disrupt the metadata within the track itself. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I don't know about y'all. I mean, you know, I got schooled early on because, you know, as a young player with Marty Stewart, it'd be like, you know, hold that note to the end and we're going to let it fade. And we've got a good tail. And then we can create that tail or make it shorter or longer. And I remember getting reprimanded a couple of times by Marty Stewart, but not keeping my mouth shut when I finished my track. You know, and that's when I first got into Nashville in '87. He said, when you get done playing, don't say anything. Be quiet. You know, let your sustain end, you know, that we've got. So, you know, that's stuff that most people know. But I do have some people in the studio that don't realize that, and they tend to talk at the end of their track, and just don't say anything. Just be quiet. Be quiet. We need that sustain, and we need that quiet at the end of it. But on the mastering side of things, you can master inside your DAW, and I don't know if you guys realize that track was a plus 2.2. It wasn't 0 unity gain, okay? It was plus 2.2. And the reason is because these were cut over such a long period of time. This record set of tracks was cut over 2 years. When COVID happened, the funding dropped and I dropped the project, and then it came back and we worked on it. So I'm human. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. And so I've got to really, some of these tracks had to be brought up within the mastering track itself so that they would represent unity gain correctly. And some of them were okay at unity gain 0.0. But I'll make a mistake if there's a lot of time involved between track 1 and track 2. I definitely will. And so I have to really watch myself and do, check my checks and balances. But I know it's about 8:08 and you guys got a song critique. I don't want to get in the middle of that because I've got a couple of edits I've got to do tonight on a session, but I really appreciate you guys having me tonight. It was a real treat.
Thank you so much, Brad.
And
thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience. I really appreciate it.
I want everybody to do well and have fun. That's really all that matters. So you guys have an awesome evening, and I look forward to seeing you on the road. We got a lot of new solo shows getting booked, and hopefully the COVID thing doesn't kill it. So
Brad, I know that you're very busy, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight and share your wisdom.
you guys are great. I miss not seeing Barb's dogs. The pups, where are the pups?
Dogs.
Where are the pups?
But she's asleep.
Okay.
Wake her up.
Well, thanks guys so much. It's great seeing you, and I appreciate the evening. You guys have a great evening.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Brad.